give a fuck? Why do I give a fuck? Why do I try so hard? Why do I care so much?
Welcome to Why Do I Give a Fuck? A cross-cultural conversation between myself, Diane Tate,
and Johanna Thompson. In these times of great struggle and possible shift, we ask ourselves,
why do we give a fuck about any of it? How does the lens we see the world through impact what we see?
And what do we do about it? What do we do about it? There's so much going on to have something to do about in this moment in particular. So how are you doing, my friend?
Well, I'm good. The main question is, how are you?
I'm not good.
Invite us all to just take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath.
Because there's a little bit of something happening in your part of the world. And of course, we're recording this today. It'll drop tomorrow. So for our listeners and folks that are watching, our friend Jay here moved to the island of Wood and Water a little while ago, living in Jamaica, but you're not in Jamaica right now, right?
You're not. So just to clarify for everyone, I'm not on the island of Jamaica. I actually left last Wednesday because I still work with an organization in the States, Florida Restorative Justice Association, and we were having our annual Down South conference, Fashioning a New World, which was a wonderful opportunity for people of like-minded resource and thought about doing justice in the way that like our indigenous technologies are continuing to do justice. So that is.
How was it?
Yeah, man. It was a great conference. I'm going to say it was a great conference from my experience, being one of the people that were hosting and leading the conference. But then also from the conference attendees, I think that a lot of people, I know that a lot of people have communicated that they walked away with new understanding, with an expanded amount of knowledge, with a lot of community building, which is critical and important for this moment that we are in. It's just so wild. I've been communicating it as a VUCA, and this is an acronym that was coined for violent. What's the acronym? Violent, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous. VUCA. And so I am embodying that in my body right now in so many ways. So just to clarify, I'm not on the island, but all of the people that I love are on the island. We're in communication through technology until it shuts off. I heard that in St. James, they are going to cut off power, and that's the parish that I'm in. That's Montego Bay. And I'm assuming that they're going to kind of roll that type of sustainability protocol out, because on an island, resources need to be shared and dispersed to the best of your ability. There's a majority of people, and I'm talking from a very privileged space, there's a majority of people on the island that don't source their electricity power and water from government agencies. So those folks will be existing and operating in the ways that they do when they're collecting the waters coming from the river, and there's going to be lots of water.
What USCNs call off the grid, living off the grid. Yeah.
A lot of off the grid living that a significant amount of the population are used to existing under. But then when the other resources from the folks that are not used to living that way, that's when I know that Jamaica and the government is trying to figure out how to make sure that people remain safe and secure and get some of the resources that they need, which is going to be very critical on the island after this Melissa passes. But, the thing that I'm going to offer is that the cultural spirit of the people of Jamaica, a lot of the folks are in the streets. I mean, and they do this down in Florida also. They're in the streets. They're keeping the vibration high with music, with singing, with laughter, with dancing, with building community. So that's wonderful to see. And I know that support for neighborhoods and communities is going to be strong because the people there don't just love each other. Like in Jamaica, the culture is somebody breaks down on the side of the road and 7 cars are going to stop to make sure that somebody has what they need. And especially if you're a female person, everyone's going to to try to figure out how to help and try to make sure that that you're safe and you get back
Yeah.
going if you need to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a beautiful thing.
So it sounds like, as I'm hearing you describe that concept of community and how everyone bands together regardless. In the US, my experience here, and maybe you had this experience too when you lived in this country, is that stuff doesn't show up typically until there's a major disaster. So, it is a wonderful thing to see when there is a big disaster and when we do see people banding together. And I remember, back when I lived in Charleston, which was a hurricane prone area, when we were hit with a storm, or we got, maybe a tail end of a storm, and people's trees were down and roads were blocked and things like that, you would see the neighborhoods coming together and helping. But it sounds like maybe it's a little more integral to the culture in Jamaica.
That is definitely the cultural context of it, because privilege is on a different scale. And so, somebody will need a roof any day of the year.
Right.
And community.
Not just because of a storm.
Right. You know what I mean? Somebody's shop and shops are in the front of people's homes, or in what we would call a cul-de-sac here, and someone has put up a shop, like there for the community, for like the neighbors that are around to be able to come and get like just easy supplies. And then just like care and consideration, and kind of like the social structure of assistance is integral to people, and a lot of people are family. So that's the other thing when you're talking about your family is extended. So like when I'm in Jamaica and they say, where are your people from? And I'm saying like, Buff Bay in down in Portland. And then they say, what's your last name? And I'm like, Watson. And then literally walking down the street saying Watson, and somebody else calls their mama and says, this woman says her grandmother is Watson. They say, oh yeah, that's cousin, sister, so-and-so. So there is also this connection of, community and extended family. If you don't know each other, you still make that relationship from the area of the island that you come. And so that's a really special thing. And then, when there's always good food and good music, those are biological enforcers, to keep people in a joy spirit of care and compassion, because it helps to alleviate a lot of the stressors. Now, this is not to say I'm not speaking in a very altruistic utopian manner. There's going to be struggle. There's going to be lots of people that need resources. There's going to be lots of help that's needed. There's going to be food insecurity significantly, because though it's a vibrant and plush land, the seeds that are sowed are going to grow back within, 4 weeks and 6 weeks for people to be able to actually harvest and eat. Still, there's going to be a moment of like scarcity and a lot of rebuilding and probably putting together a lot of communities. One of the things that I'm really curious about, because I haven't seen structural infrastructure for this in particular, is all of the building that's happening from corporations. So like near to my home, there is like a mega mart type of facility that's going to be built. The Hard Rock is building like a couple of miles down. And I'm concerned about those things, because like the bricks and the sand and the boards and all of that kind of stuff is out. It's not covered. It's not housed in any type of situation. And then with 165 degrees of wind, living in Florida, knowing that a car can be, taken across the way, a tree can be flown, boats that are in the yacht yards in Florida get all smashed up on each other. And we're talking about fishermen boats. We're talking about a lot of water sports materials, and none of these places have any place to actually be covered and housed. And so I'm really curious, because when Beryl happened, there was a significant amount of destruction, but Beryl wasn't at what we're expecting with Melissa to be. And so, it'll be very curious to see what the cleanup is and to see when people can get on the island. I know with the airlines, there were a number of planes that went in yesterday and the day before to try to get people who are there visiting back to their respective countries.
Mm-hmm.
The airport in Montego Bay is shut down as of now. The airport in Kingston goes out into the water, so we're not sure what the impact of that is going to be, the runway. And so we have no idea what the storm surge and the impact of that is going to be for flights to get either in and out of the country. And so there's going to be, you know, waterlocked in some cases. And I am just in the mindset of the spirit of the people, always being resilient, being able to rise and being able to rebuild. And that is what my hope and my love and my intentions are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine. I mean, like, where is it living in your body right now? The feeling of, I mean, what are you feeling right now in terms of, I know you've had a very busy weekend because you hosted this conference for your organization that you've been planning for months, and you know, any of us that have had anything to do with putting on a big conference like that, you're usually just depleted and exhausted, even if it's uplifting and even if it's a wonderful experience, it's draining, especially to be the organizers for such. I'm just curious about where in your body, you know, you're feeling this right now.
I appreciate asking that question because we don't really have opportunity to check in with ourselves or with each other like this typically. If I am paying attention to my body in this moment, I'm feeling it in my throat. Like I'm feeling it in my respiratory, like my ability to breathe full calming breaths. And I'm feeling it in my shoulders and my back more than anything. I haven't eaten today. So if I had eaten, I probably, you know, I'm always stomach sensitive as a human being. I probably would be feeling that a little bit more. But those are the places that I'm feeling it. I'm happy and blessed to be on the States with my young person who is a very calming human being. And so as I come out the room,
right.
as they come out the room all frantic, and she's like, "All right, mama, let's just take one day at a time. Let's just hold on. Like if we are planting ourselves and grounding ourselves, we actually are okay." And I'm talking about like, you know, a very convoluted stress. So like in the very physical present moment, I'm dealing with, okay, what's going on with the island of Jamaica? What is it going to look like for me to get back there and to assess what I need to put together there? And doing that without any resource, because in the organization that I'm dealing with in this moment, one of our angel donors is done. And a lot of organizations, because a number of them were at our conference, are dealing with the same struggle of not being able to have funding. And that's on an organizational level. We're not even talking about on an individualistic level where people are really struggling what their sustainability is going to be, especially in the context of folks being reliant on something and the things that you're reliant on being taken away from you without preparation.
Right.
Without like this preparation. So like as far as food stamps and benefits and the rollback on that with the government shutdown and everything like that, folks who are traditionally used to having that support and not having any contingency plan of that, I'm sure are feeling the same things in their body in a really stressed out way. In the same way that corporations that do social justice and care work for people and are not having the same amount of resources, but having a much higher need out in communities, it really does shift, you know, our priorities. One of the organizations, Capital Area Justice Ministries, that was with us over this weekend was recognizing people are calling them up with food insecurity, needing food security. I want to use the more positive language, but figuring out how to build food security for themselves, which is, you know, when people don't have food, people respond to that because that's a biological enforcer. When people don't have the care and resources that they need, there is a responsiveness. And I had a moment of, ooh, people are not going to be having their food. They brought in the militia. They've built all of these prisons. They're criminalizing poverty, but creating poverty. So, yeah,
it's a vicious cycle.
It's taking my breath. Yeah, it's taking my breath away.
Yeah. Oh, well, and I want to just say out loud, you know, we're definitely focused on Jamaica specifically because we do know this Category 5 storm is headed right for the island, but it's also going to impact the Dominican Republic. It's going to impact Haiti. It's going to impact, you know, quite a few of the islands in that area in the Caribbean. And so I guess I just want to say out loud, if any of them are listening or end up listening to this this episode at any point, that we just, we want to keep our thoughts and our good energies pointed in their direction for sustaining. I mean, obviously they've been through this before, living on an island in the Caribbean. You are going to experience these storms even more so maybe than those of us here on the U.S. territory. Certainly any of us that live on the East Coast, and certainly in the southern East Coast, know what it's like to have these storms heading in our direction. As I mentioned, I lived in Charleston, South Carolina for over 20 years. So every year in September of course it starts in June, but usually things start to really ramp up in September. And my daughter's birthday's in September. So, if I think about all the birthday parties that I had to postpone and redirect because of that timeline of when the storms usually come through. And of course, I'm not even going to mention that most of these storms start on the continent, off the coast of the continent of Africa, and then they come in this direction and they hit the cities that took, that the transatlantic slave trade was the most active in. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I truly believe that until we atone for one of the original sins of this country, which was the enslavement of the African people and the kidnapping of them, that, these storms are just going to continue, because that's the universe's way of trying to get us to own our shit. That's just me, a little commentary there. But yeah, I just wanted to hold space for what it must feel like for you. I know that have you been there a year yet? You've been there a year.
It's almost 2 years going on soon. Yeah.
2 years?
Almost
2.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I missed the 1 year.
you know what this is an anniversary of, though? I'm 6 months out of having my stroke.
Wow. 6 months.
6 months out of having my stroke, and look at my smile today.
Sound effects for that. We need what do we need? We need applause.
Yeah, man. That's a huge blessing. Within all of the context of this, I still have life, and I still also have all of my mobility. The only thing is my eyesight that still feels a little bit funny, but that is a blessing to be able to celebrate amidst all of this other chaos and remembrance. Yes. An opportunity to be here.
Oh, I'm so grateful to hear that, to be reminded of that. And oh my gosh.
I know.
Many blessings for sure. And like you said, grateful that you're not on the island right now, even though that does, what I'm hearing is that brings its own level of apprehension, because you're not there. So you don't have to necessarily directly feel the impacts of the storm itself, but worrying about your space, worrying about the people that you know and love on the island, worrying about how long it's going to be before you can get back. All of those things I can imagine are, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. You're grateful that you're not there, but you almost wish you were, because you can't be connected. So yeah, I just wanted to hold you and appreciative that you were willing and able in the wake of this amazing conference that you just put on, and with all the stress that you've got going on, that you were able to join me today and to have a chat. And it's funny, because after 20 years of living in Charleston and always being on hurricane watch at this time of the year, I've been now in the Northeast for almost 4 years. 4 years in just a few days. And it's interesting, because I don't hear about the storms. It doesn't get, to my algorithm and my realm until they get really big and they are threatening something. My daughter is still in South Carolina, but she's inland. So even though she can get impacts of storms, she's not on the coast. And so, so it feels a little removed, I'll all of a sudden hear about a storm when it's gotten to be like Cat 4 or Cat 5. When living on the coast, you start to hear it, long before it's even dubbed as a hurricane, and all the planning that goes along with it. And so the neurons and the nervous system in my body gets triggered by that a little bit, because I know what that feels like to be watching, to have the Weather Channel on loop. And, we always used to we always used to try to find out where Jim Cantori was, because wherever he was, we knew was going to be where it hit. Although,
tell me, who is this? Jim
Jim
Cantori.
Cantori, he's a long time Weather Channel guy, and for any of you listening to this who might not be in the U.S. territory, the Weather Channel is like the go-to for all things weather on U.S. territory, and he was the guy that wherever it was going to be the worst, Jim showed up. And so I don't think it's as much anymore. I think actually there's a couple of other weather people that have taken his place. Getting old, just like anybody else. So he's like,
I'm an Anderson Cooper kind of girl.
No, but it used to be back in the day when my daughter was young. It was always like, "Where's Jim?" We in the Charleston, in our network, we were always like, "Is Jim here yet? If he's not here yet, we're going to be okay." And then we also had in Charleston, the Coburg company was based in Charleston, and we have a on one of the main arteries, roads, if you will, on James Island is the Coburg cow. So it's the cow that sits up on it's fake, obviously, sits up on above the street, above the sign, and it spins, and it can be different colors. They change the color depending on the time of year but it's a national historical monument, whatever. So it's got some sort of historical status. And so you always know that's the buzz. When the cow comes down, that's when everybody in Charleston's like, oh, they took the cow down. Now it's time to go to the grocery store and batten down the hatches because the cow came down. But by the same time, the rest of the buzz is the cow still up? Is anybody seen? Has anyone been on Savannah Highway? Is the cow still up? As long as the cow's up, we're going to be cool. So
that's interesting that you say that, because I'm wondering, because I also was off the island last year for Beryl, and I'm wondering if there is a thing for folks that are on the island right now that would signify to literally start to get serious about.
This is a big one, right?
Yeah, what this is. And as far as the reporting of the news of the weather, I haven't been able to access it as clearly as what we get when living in Florida.
Right.
Coming, on all of the news stations. So I'm trying to access like the news stations that are actually providing consistent coverage. My consistent coverage is literally coming from my people themselves. Like someone calling me, send me a video of what's happening on the block. You know what I mean? Or like from their
window, they're filming it. Yeah.
Like, are you okay? What are you doing to prepare? And preparation looks very different than what I'm used to experiencing. Everybody rushing to the store to get water and all of that kind of stuff. On the island, it's mostly more communities watching. I also got a call from a neighbor that said, 2 of your windows are open. So I do know that the neighbors are also looking out, and those are windows that can't close on the house. But at least I know that people are like checking on other people's things. And I think that that's scary because I'm not there. And a call did come into me that said people are checking in. And that's going to be really critical,
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that's going to be really critical as far as communication and connection. There's also going to be, most people on the island use WhatsApp to communicate, both Flow and the other Digicel. I have Flow. Both Flow and Digicel said that they try to make sure that the infrastructure is strong, but then we're also used to those type of communications being cut off. So a lot of the people that I'm in communication with called me today, which is why I couldn't get on the time that we had scheduled initially, but called me today to like kind of give me the last updates before power gets cut. And power getting cut means that Wi-Fi and all of that is going to get cut. I was using kind of the satellite Wi-Fi, but I brought that in before I left off of the island. And so those might be the folks that have opportunity to stay connected. But if they're participating with Flow or Digicel, the communication lines are definitely going to get choppy. So people's ability to connect with their loved ones is going to be limited.
Yeah, I saw something about that. I was on one of the social media apps earlier and was seeing people posting about what was happening. And I remember seeing something about asking, one of the posts was about asking government entities to make something free and accessible to everyone, because not everyone had WhatsApp, or WhatsApp was possibly going to go down, I guess, because of Wi-Fi. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure, like we were saying before, anyone that lives on an island in the Caribbean understands what it's like to weather these storms, and has been through this many times before. And so likely has their own system of what they do and how they prepare. I thought it was really interesting, your point about these larger companies that are building really large structures, and whether or not they took the time to batten down their hatches, I mean, they're in the heart of hurricane season right now, and it doesn't end until November. And so it's like, did they take the time to make sure that those materials that will become missiles, like you said, even in 100-degree winds, much less 160, and an island is, in the US, I think we get accustomed to these storms, because we're so much of a bigger landmass, right? That when the storm comes inland, it tends to dissipate, or at least we're seeing that change with climate change and the storms being bigger. And we're starting to see with Helene, for example, that came across the Florida panhandle and then went up into the North Carolina mountains. The ferocity with which that storm kept its power as it went up into the mountains, and that's not typical. Typically, hurricanes, once they hit land and they run into trees, and certainly if they hit any kind of mountainous region, it usually dissipates it fairly quickly. And so but an island doesn't necessarily have, even though Jamaica has mountains, and a lot of these Caribbean islands that were volcanic in nature or in their formation have the topography that could slow it down. It's such a small landmass.
Yeah.
And this thing is massive. I mean, it is.
Yeah, no.
It is.
You see a picture of the size of the hurricane. It's like 4 times the size of the land. So that's right. One. And it really is.
It doesn't dissipate it at all.
It's the aftermath, it's the effect. So like we're talking about storm surge. When you are mentioning the resorts, most of the resorts are on the waterfront. And so they're going to be impacted significantly. I haven't been on the island long enough to know what the politics are about those major corporations and their responsibility to infrastructure. I'm not really curious. I'm not really clear about what that looks like for the island, but I can imagine that, the way that I understand and know corporation coming off of U.S. territory is that what they're going to be mostly concerned about is the loss to their property and less the loss to what's happening in communities. Though there is a consideration that most of the people that work for those corporations are coming from communities. And if they don't have transportation to the resort, or if they don't have shelter from leaving the resort, if they don't have food, that is going to look very, very interesting. Yeah. And I haven't had the experience of knowing what that looks like, but I am very curious as to like what infrastructure looks like. And environmental justice, when we're on islands like that, become really much more difficult for female-bodied people because we can't negotiate the environment the same way that male-bodied people can. The safety risks, the ability to be able to, get all of the resources that are necessary becomes particularly important. And one of the things that I always talk about is, reproductive justice in Jamaica in particularly. And when we think about reproductive justice, we're thinking about, birthing, but I'm thinking about just being a female body human and having their safety. A lot of women in Jamaica are walking on the roads. And I've always been like, the roads need to be fixed in Jamaica, because as women are walking on the road and a pebble pops up when a car drives by because there's a pothole or and like that, the person that's at risk is the mama who's walking with her babies, from school or from the grocery store or whatever the case may be. And those are the communities that we have to protect, because that's our future generations. Those are the folks that hold and are bringing up our future generations. So environmental justice, specifically for female-bodied people, is a particular consideration that needs to be had, especially when you're on an island, and for safety and for the social structures of support that happen on the island.
Yeah, I'm thinking about these, getting back to the corporations, I'm thinking about, that they've got insurance, right? So for them, losing, having the impact of a storm taking or impacting their materials, their source materials that they have sitting there, it's going to be a pain to them. It might be lots of paperwork and time, but they're insured. I'm sure they have insurance to cover, I would imagine.
What does international insurance look like? That would
I
be
don't
wonderful to
know.
have
I mean,
someone to
I
come
would
on to
imagine
the
they would have to have some kind of coverage. Otherwise,
Mhm.
we know that most corporations don't do anything unless the bottom line is sound. And if
Sure.
they're going to be building something that requires that much materials that you can't necessarily source on the island, you have to ship them there,
Mhm.
which already costs an arm and a leg. And then you've got, you don't want to run the risk of losing all of that without being insured. But what I heard you say, or what I thought of when you were talking about people not necessarily having the transportation to get to the site, if they're relying on the local people to shore up all of those materials and they can't get there because they need to take care of their own families and shore up their own houses, it's like but I guess maybe I'm a little cynical, but I'm not really thinking that the corporations care at all about the amount of missiles that they left sitting unprotected, and what kind of damage it could do to the community surrounding where they're building. They're just thinking about, how can I get reimbursed for the supplies that I lost? So
I think that a day's wage, just to give people kind of an economy of scale about care for workers in Jamaica, I think a
mhm.
day's wage is at $3,500, 3,500 Jamaican, which is about $30 a day
Oh, wow. Wow.
for an 8-hour day.
Yeah.
So like, so I'm
And I
confident.
don't know a lot about the economy. Does that the economy in Jamaica,
Oh, that's not helpful. We're on
yeah.
an island. Everything in the island costs 3 times the amount, which is why people with privilege
Yeah,
leave the island, or they ask family members that are outside of the island to
right.
send product, like just basic need products. Like when I need something, when I'm making these videos and I'm off the island, most of the time I'm coming to shop for soap and toilet tissue and soap powder, because on the island I'm going to pay $30 for a gallon of Tide to wash my clothes, or $5 for a bar of soap, or $7 for a toothpaste. And that's, for me, that doesn't make sense being from the US.
And it's a fairly large, I think I've read somewhere that there's a fairly large community of Jamaican folks that live in the US for the
Absolutely.
sole purpose of working to send back,
Mhm.
because they can I mean, so I guess I just wanted to say that out loud for anybody that's listening, thinking about the, where there's lots of conversation in the US right now about immigration and about
Absolutely.
why people come to the US. And the narrative that we hear all the time is that they're coming here to take our jobs, or they're coming here to take, or they're coming because they want to, it's never just the real story about people who are just trying to do the best they can for their families. and
Absolutely.
and if they can come to this country and work and earn a higher wage than $30 for an 8-hour day, and be able to send but they've got to manage their life here
Yeah.
while they're trying to, so they work a lot so that whatever they make extra they can send home. I mean, there's, and that's not just Jamaica, that's not just the Caribbean, it's anybody from any
Many
country.
countries, it's many countries, but that's the resilience of countries that are like, and that's why I started to like really just snap it up, because that's the resilience of people that
Yeah,
come from places with less resource. Because the other reality is that folks that do come and sow into a different economy, one, they're sowing into that economy. So folks that
yeah,
come over here that are joining our armed forces, that are
yeah.
working in our restaurants, that are
That are paying way more
doing,
taxes than the
doing
corporations are paying. Thank you very
supporting
much.
our social services, are
Yeah,
sowing into one economy, and they figured out a mechanism to be able to make sure that they are supporting the economies from the heritage and the countries that they come from
right.
as well. Because when the money goes back, it's not played with. The money is like building houses. You know what I mean? It's putting the young people in school and like
Mhm.
continuing this cycle of being able to advance and elevate the communities. But there has to be stronger structures and a a better proportionality of wage, because a lot of the corporations that are coming in from the US are not paying their workers fair wages.
Mm-hmm.
And they should be, and they know what the work is worth.
Yeah.
And that should also be something that the government makes a mandate of these corporations when they come in and are taking so many resources from these wonderful.
Well, that's part of the reasons why corporations build in other countries, right? And it's why so many of our manufacturing companies, manufacturing systems left the US and went to other countries, because they can get away with, based on the economy of the country that they went to, the labor is a lot cheaper. You know, they can get away with paying ridiculously low amounts for their workers, and then ship the goods over to the US and charge premium prices. And so we wonder why in the US why there's so little manufacturing anymore. It's because it's so much more, you know, their profit margin is so much better when they are, you know, and they like to spin it as if they're creating jobs does that sound familiar? Creating jobs in other countries. And they're only doing it because they can pay people cents on the dollar for the work they're doing, if they even pay them at all. So, and the working conditions are horrific. And I mean, we've been hearing, or at least I've been hearing, I know you have too, about the cobalt mines in the Congo, and the child labor. There are no labor laws in a lot of these countries, and children are working there to death.
Survive.
Every day. And so, it's a shit show on global proportions, but I guess I
don't want to misrepresent, though. People are happy on the island when there are opportunities for jobs. So even if they're not getting, you know what I mean? It's kind of like internal struggle. Like if you're talking to anyone who is talking about having an opportunity to make money and have a job, they are definitely happy that this type of corporate infrastructure is happening. It's just that there needs to be some accountability on the corporations to not take advantage of the labor.
Right.
It's the way to think about it. So,
and accountability. I actually was just listening to, not long ago, maybe a week ago, I was listening to Amanda Seales in an interview, and I should have researched this, but it just came to my mind. So I do not remember the name of the woman she was speaking with. My apologies. But she was a person who I believed managed tourism for Grenada. Amanda Seales is Grenadian. And so she was speaking to this woman, talking about, and the thing that they were talking about that really struck a chord with me was the idea that when we as tourists, and I'm speaking to my USians here, because a lot of us like to travel to the Caribbean islands. We like to travel to places and we love to go spend our dollars. But where do we spend our dollars when we go? What kind of impact do we make on the island or the land that we go to? And the woman that she was interviewing, who was the head of tourism I believe she was the head of tourism for Grenada, was talking about the choice that you can make as a tourist to stay at a place. And it made me think of you with your guest house, to stay at a place that is local run, that is where your money will stay in the economy of the island that you're on, or the area that you're in. Because she was saying that so many of these U.S. run corporations, like Sandals, some of the bigger names that you would go to these all-inclusive
Sandals, Riu, beaches. I can't name them because they're all on the bottom of my report.
We're all there. You know, that oftentimes when you go to them as a person who's like, I hear all the time people say, oh, I love those all-inclusive resorts because you just go and you don't have to go anywhere. Well, first of all, why would you want to go all the way to a beautiful island in the Caribbean and not meet any locals? That's number one. But number two, the money that you're giving to these all-inclusive resorts is leaving the island. It does not benefit that community at all. So and
then you're raping the environment.
It was a big aha for me, with the idea that as a tourist, I need to be super mindful about where I'm going, who I'm supporting, where my money is going. Is the money that I'm spending on that island or in that area actually benefiting the communities that are there, or am I handing it to a corporation that's just going to take it off the island? So I just wanted to speak into that because I thought that was super important as we're talking about tourism.
No, it is a major consideration. And to expand on that thought is that those corporations are raping the resources of the island that the indigenous communities exist on. Excuse me. Excuse me. And so it is also creating more environmental justice issues. And I want to talk about what it looks like for us as we continue this conversation, for like, what are some of the ways that we can resolve some of these issues and some of the ways that we can create a better travel economy than exists now.
And I think it starts with awareness, right? It starts with thinking about, another point to make, and that I know we have to go, but another point that I've been thinking about, as there's so many USians who have the resources to do so are exploring moving out of this country because of the state of affairs here and where it's going. And I just want to plant this little seed or this little nugget, and maybe we can expand on it in another episode. But the idea that if you're thinking about moving to another country as a USian, first of all, you're not going to be an expat. You're an immigrant. You're going to be an immigrant. If you go to another country to live, you're an immigrant. So just wear that for a little bit. And the second thing is, or another thing is just the impact that you make on that country. If you go to another country, are you consciously finding out about the local and the indigenous and the cultural aspects of where you move to, or are you only looking to just pick up your USian mindset and take it to another country and create another USian environment? And as a person who has actively thought about moving out of this country, and I know you did, but you went to the land of your ancestors, so I totally get that. But I think that's really important for all of us to think about. And I think that goes along in the same lines as being mindful tourists, being mindful and intentional people who, we talk about shrinking our carbon footprint on the world, but we also need to think about our cultural footprint and what we do to colonize and to extract from other cultures when when we go other places. And I say I'm mostly talking about USians because that's who we is.
We also have to check out the narratives that exist that feed into that, because a lot of people, when they are traveling, will be like, stay safe. The people, it's not safe to go out of the resort. You don't know.
Go out at night.
Which is just madness, because that's not the reality. I mean, every place is unsafe in some way, and every place is safe and wonderful in some way.
And who are we kidding? The U.S. is one of the most unsafe countries that has been for a very long time. So.
It's both and.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, my friend, we are sending lots of love to Jamaica, to the DR, to Haiti, to any of the areas
all of the
that are going
Caribbean
to be impacted by this storm, and looking forward to hearing about how everything is going. You'll keep us posted on everything, on what's going on the island as well. So,
and a celebration of how we rebuild.
Yes, always how we rebuild. And congratulations on your 6 months since your stroke and your healing journey. And I just continue to love you and appreciate this friendship. So
absolutely.
I'll see you again.
Right. Keep talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, as you move throughout your day, continue to ask yourself,
Why Do I Give a Fuck is produced in collaboration with Johanna and Diane. Music by Norwegian musician Water. See you next time.